Hey guys, Ted Bogert with the Ted Show. We have a really cool guest today. I know you guys say I say that about everybody, but Ryan Rosoff is here with Little King, and we're also going to talk about team building ROI. And you have a lot of different things going on, and I love each one of them. So welcome to the show, Ryan.
Appreciate you having me, Ted. Thanks very much. I think it's the story of my life is that I have a lot going on, and certainly, with all the madness swirling around us in the last 3 or 4 months, that's only sort of increased exponentially, I think.
Well, I mean, if one side of your brain you get tired of using, you're certainly using the other side because you've got the whole business and
That's
you've got music. But I do love this topic, creating a legacy of thoughtfulness and kindness through music and fun. So we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
And hi, everyone who's popping on. We love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Tell us a little bit about you, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, other than the obvious, which you've stated, which is being the owner of a team building company, as well as the founder and singer, guitar player, producer, creator of Little King for the last 23 years. I'm a West Coast kid that lives on the East Coast. So I grew up in Seattle, went to school in Arizona and Texas, moved around quite a bit in and out of California as well. And then about 7 years ago, ended up in the godforsaken state known as Delaware. So living in southern Delaware on the beaches right now. I got a couple kids. My son is 13. I have a 23-year-old daughter who's down in Texas. My son actually lives with me here in Delaware.
Wow, 23-year-old. I had to pull that up just to see.
Yeah,
very young.
Thanks, man. It's clean living is what it is.
Yeah.
We're good genes. I think it's probably more good genes than clean living.
Which is why I'm actually only 20.
22. Yeah, at 20. Nice. That's your Hollywood age, dude. You're good.
That is definitely my Hollywood age.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've always been active in music, or at least, for the last 23 years when the first Little King album came out in 1997. I've owned Team Building ROI. We founded that company about 9 years ago, just a little over 9 years ago, based in Silicon Valley. So I have been operating Team Building ROI from Delaware for the last 7 years, while my partner and my entire staff basically are in San Jose and in Mountain View and Silicon Valley proper. So that, in conjunction with being a single dad, in conjunction with making music and producing an album last year and getting ready actually to make another one here in the next couple months. COVID has thrown a wrench in all of that stuff to a certain extent, but I think as an artist and as a business owner, you have to learn to pivot and persevere and kind of make things work for you as much as you possibly can. So
you're definitely I can tell, a master at pivoting. I mean, I want to hear both stories on how Little King came to be and how Team Building ROI came to be. So I'll let you pick one and start with it.
Yeah, I think Little King, just in terms of chronology, is probably the place to start, just because that basically formed in November of 1996 in El Paso, Texas. I lived there off and on for, almost 17 years. So I had followed a girl there in the early 90s, and then ended up getting married and settling down. And I'd always been playing guitar and kind of interested in music, but really kind of got serious in 1995 playing with another band called Tweet Quickly. And when that band disintegrated, I had a bunch of songs that I'd kind of half written and really wanted to try my hand at recording. And so we did. We made an album called Trans Mountain in 1997. It was released, and it's an unmitigated disaster, my friend. I mean, I actually just published the lyrics on our website. We have a website at littlekingtunes.com, and I actually went through the process of transcribing all my lyrics from the last 6 albums. I've written, over 45 songs. And so I was reading through some of those lyrics from 1997 and just started going, oh my gosh. Hopefully there's been a progression. But, through the years, I've always had careers and been a husband and a father for almost the entire time of Little King. So it's been a juggling act between, having a career and paying bills and a mortgage, and also, wanting to continue to be creative and really as my creative outlet and sort of, the way that I keep myself at least somewhat sane is through the release of music. And so, it seems like every 3 or 4 or 5 years, there's a Little King project. And the last one came out in 2019, which was called Occam's Foil. And I was really proud of it when it came out. But, with all the release of my records, you never really know what the reception is going to be like. And, to say the very least, it's been incredible how many people have responded to it favorably. And in terms of radio play and Spotify play and social media madness and all that stuff, it's really kind of taken off beyond, what we had really intended. So it's exciting. It's given us some momentum coming forward into the new year. unfortunately, we had a lot of festival dates and a lot of club dates set up for this year, and of course that wasn't going to happen. So, and we really don't know, Ted, to be honest with you, when that's going to come back. But
I don't think anybody does.
no, nobody does. But
but
it's a reason to keep going back in the studio and create more music. If you can't be live, you better stay at it. And we've got some momentum, and we feel really good about new songs and making a record. So in the next couple months,
what genre? Since
yeah.
Yes, guys, I know you're asking, but Ryan is not singing today. What genre of music is Little King?
So the best description that I've heard is melodic, dynamic, progressive rock. And I think progressive rock has a lot of connotations of different time signatures and different harmonies and lots of tempos and sometimes very elongated songs with people singing at the top octave at the top of their lungs. And I don't think that's really where we are, but we certainly do mess with time signatures. And I think all the songs are in different keys and there are a lot of mode changes. So we're not playing a lot of straight 4/4, 120 beats a minute. There are a lot of variations, even within the context of an EP. The last one is only about 20 minutes long, but we cram a lot of genres and styles in there. So I think progressive rock is as good a moniker as any. But I like to say dynamic too, because I think we're touching on from the loudest of the loud to the softest of the soft and all points in between. And if you can do that in a cohesive project, again, within the space of 20 minutes and really, bring it all full circle from loud to soft and then back to loud and finish on a high note, I think that's kind of the, where the dynamic moniker comes. And I'm comfortable with that. I
love that. No, I like that. The description is good.
Yeah. So, our bands that we're influenced by are Rush and Led Zeppelin and The Who and the Foo Fighters. And, I equally have, Vivaldi and Mozart and Peter Tosh and Tupac and Biggie on my, it's a lot. There are a lot of genres and styles crammed in there. But, at the very end of the day, we're certainly a rock and roll band for sure.
So tell me why, because that's why I love to have the guests create their title or come up with something. Yeah. You created this, you picked this, and I love it. So, I would love for you to give them a perspective, what you're talking about as far as legacy and thoughtfulness, and of course, bring the music in because that's one of your passions. So sure. Why this topic and how do you create that legacy?
Well, a legacy is important to me, and it's been important to me, ever since I started out. As a matter of fact, I put a record out in 2008 called Legacy of Fools. I always like to poke a little fun at myself, so I guess if there's a fool in that title, it's probably Little King itself. But a legacy is important. I always think about what we are willfully leaving behind as well as what we're leaving behind that we may not realize at the time. And so consciousness of anything, I think, is the first step. And so consciousness that I am leaving a legacy of music and a legacy of art, as well as a legacy of parenthood and a legacy of team building, which we'll get to, creating fun programs. So legacy is important to me, and as I reflect on that, as I think about that in the creative process, what's important to me is making sure that the lyrics speak to a wide audience, but at the same time are thoughtful and introspective. And, I was a creative writing teacher. I actually taught high school for a few years, and so I have a bachelor's degree in creative writing from the UTEP, from the University of Texas, El Paso. So words are incredibly important to me, and they speak to such a broad audience, even if you don't necessarily care for the style of music that we're creating. Maybe if you do go to the website and you read the lyrics, you're like, wow, this guy has some things that maybe I haven't thought about or perspective that I haven't thought about. So for me, if I can leave a legacy of thoughtfulness and creativity within words and avoiding cliches and using alliteration and assonance and creating images and creating pictures with words, that's what I really strive for. And sometimes I think I hit it. Sometimes I think I don't hit it quite so well, but at least it's something that's in the fore of my mind. So that's, certainly my legacy from a musical and from a lyrical standpoint. And then, from the team building side, teaching corporate groups how to work together. And especially now that everybody's working remotely and all of our clients are working remotely, creating a legacy of people treating each other with kindness and respect and learning about communication styles and how to relate to each other and how to be thoughtful and how to work together as a team to, for creative solutions rather than being an individual operator that's always trying to, lead the way themselves and how they fit into a team with their communication styles and their leadership styles. That's a legacy too. So the combination of all those things, I felt that little tagline that you asked me to create,
good.
That was as good as anything. I could have been a million different ways, but that felt.
Well, you threw fun in there too, and that's obviously something that you bring to the table, sure, regardless of how serious the team building can be or the corporate stuff. You've mentioned your kids a couple of times. Are you a different parent than your parents were?
My parents are great. I feel like I won the parental lottery, so to speak. And I tell people
I love hearing that.
Yeah, they're just great. They're good people. They're solid. they're very thoughtful and kind. They're bright. They're both accomplished, intellectually in their own right and educationally. So I always felt, I mean, it sounds great in theory, but there is a little bit of pressure. You don't want to be a worse parent than your kids, right? You want to, you're than your parents. You want to make sure that
improve a little.
there's a legacy, right? Again, the legacy of my parents. So I am a different parent in that I think I'm probably a little bit more involved in the day-to-day of what my children want to do. I think maybe I'm a little more emotional connected. My son's probably sitting in the next room listening to this and rolling his eyes. But I think, I try to carry the legacy that they left, which is thoughtfulness and kindness. I'm definitely the black sheep, Ted, of my family. Most everybody else has been fairly straightforward in their career choices and family situations and where they've chosen to live and move and what they've chosen to do. But my dad, my father was a physician. He's a liver doctor, retired now. But they were very traditional in their path, and I am clearly not traditional in my path. So they've never judged for that. They've always been supportive. They've asked relevant questions. They've always really, even when they probably hung the phone up, they probably shook their head and said, "What the hell is your son doing?" They've been great, the whole time, and they're still, they're in their late 70s, mid and late 70s now, but they're still very active mentally and physically. And again, God bless them. I really feel fortunate. So if I can improve on that, or if I can at least, carry that forward to my children, I think maybe I'm doing my kids as good a service as I possibly can.
I love it. I agree. You just want to. I wanted to be different in my own way. The legacy is so important.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about the team building. All right. So how does team building ROI come into play? Because I understand the word team building because I've done it and do it.
Yeah.
A lot of people think team building, oh my God, they're going to make me get all touchy-feely.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to cry. I don't want to cry on demand, so I make the guy feel good. Yeah. I mean, people do. It's funny because people, when you say team building, you either get oh, that's cool, or oh, yeah, no, I don't do that. But how did you develop that as a business, and how did you kind of come into that?
Sure. So I've always been an entertainer, obviously, and I have a background in, in writing and in education as a high school teacher. So I was living in El Paso up until 2008, and I'd been there off and on, and I just decided it was time to go. So moved to Northern California, to Silicon Valley, and took a job there in the event planning industry. So doing event entertainment, booking bands, and doing a lot of bar and bat mitzvahs and wedding planning, and, again, total gypsy existence, right? So I was doing, starting to do some corporate events. And of course, my office, in North San Jose was, and is still, 10 minutes or 15 minutes away from Apple and Google and Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter up in San Francisco, and Cisco and Yahoo and Intel and HP and Adobe and Salesforce, and on and on and on. So, with an educational background as well as an entertainment background and an event planning background, that sort of triumvirate, that holy trinity, really feeds into that whole team building thing. So we were seeing a lot of really bad team building around us. A lot of, as you said, trust falls and talking about feelings and kumbaya and things like that. So what we wanted to make sure that we did, as I started the company, I'm the founder and CEO of the company, and as we moved forward, we wanted to make sure that we were de-emphasizing the touchy-feely, and that it was there, debrief with possibilities and some of the higher level organizational development that we can bring to the table in terms of, as I said, communication style inventories and disc training and things. That stuff's available, but we de-emphasize that with our business model. It's much more about fun. So, we use things like food trucks and scavenger hunts and murder mysteries and building catapults and drones and so many other different kinds of things. Now, obviously, with social distancing, things have grinded to a halt in the last 3 months. But even from that standpoint, we pivoted hard in March and April, and we said, if we're going to survive, we have to. So we've created, 6 virtual team building programs, which has been super successful. And it's at least kept the lights on. We're not making a ton of money, that's for sure. But by the same token, we've still been, done a bunch of events for Apple and for Google and for Facebook and some of the clients. We've maintained relevancy through our virtual training. And the moniker has always been, or the mission statement has always been, make sure that people have fun, make sure that they're interacting. The team building value should be inherent in what we do in terms of people having fun through the course of our programs. And if they want a higher level debrief, if they want to talk about some of the OD stuff, we're available to do it, but that's not the prime focus of what we do. We want to make sure that people step outside of themselves in their office, maybe pull themselves out of their comfort zone a little bit, but still in the context of having fun. And boy, it's been amazing. We did 210 events last year in Silicon Valley.
Wow.
So we really were busy, and obviously it's not going to be anywhere close to that. We've still facilitated about 60.
210. Do you travel?
I do not much. My whole staff is in Silicon Valley. I mean, I've worked in North Carolina and DC and Maryland and Virginia a little bit, and Seattle. We've gone to I've gone to Indiana a couple times, but no, my staff, my partner, and my staff are all based in Silicon Valley. So in the height of summer, Ted, in July, we'll do upwards of 35 or 40 events in a busy year.
Wow.
So all of those things being equal, I sort of sit here in my ivory tower in Delaware But no, I'm as the sales and marketing face of our company, I really am able to do this, blissfully for anywhere. I sort of can stay remote, and if I'm traveling or whatever, I can still conduct my business from wherever it is that I am. But no, my staff is, my boots on the ground are all in Silicon Valley. So, yeah, they do it. They handle it, and I'm blessed with just awesome staff, awesome people for sure.
Well, you set the tone.
Sure.
That's a whole nother discussion, but I can tell you set the tone. I want to ask you about business.
I do want to speak to leadership, though, because I think it's important. I know you have some background and some training in that too. And so I think leadership, we've really examined that closely, certainly with current events going on, and we don't need to digress into a political rant, but the fish rots from the head down, or the fish sets the tone from the head down. And so good leadership to me has always been, accepting all blame and deflecting all praise. And if things go wrong, I'm going to be the first one to accept the blame and examine my behavior and how I can set the tone. By the same token, if things are going really well and things are great, I don't need to be the one that's accepting praise for that. I'm blessed and happy when my team is successful. Obviously, I'm going to be successful if my team is successful. So it's just leadership 101, dude. I mean, if things are going well, it's everybody else's responsibility, and you praise them. If things are going poorly, you're the leader. You accept responsibility and examine your role in that, and how can you do better? And boy, does that trickle down in a heartbeat. It really works that way. And I don't know why that's such a difficult concept for people.
It's so hard for people, though. They really don't understand it. They also don't have, I feel like a lot of times leadership tries to do that, but they only do one part of that equation you just described, not both. I think both are critical for it to be truly successful. You have to deflect the praise and accept the responsibility. A lot of them will do the opposite or only take one or the other, and there's not both. And I think that unfortunately sends another message. I want to ask you about management, though. I know from experience that if somebody's engaged me and they want me to come out and they want me to help with their team or do anything like that, a lot of times those are the exact same people that have absolutely no desire to change. Or they feel like the change is not about them.
Yes.
They know it needs to be done. So how do you handle that? Because I know that's actually really common. How do you handle it with that particular level? How do you get them over the hump so that they are part of the herd, for lack of a better word?
Well, quick backstory. When we first got into business, we had very high aspirations and lofty goals of being this organizational development company affecting change. And, we were the core of our clientele, the people that, these companies that are contacting us in a B2B context were HR professionals and executive assistants and administrative assistants. And we were very certain that people really wanted surveys, and they really wanted, metrics that were evaluating and feeding back to them the efficacy of our team building programs. We came to find out most of those people didn't want to know.
Right.
They were scared of what the results looked like because they didn't want to hear negative feedback. They feared for their position if their superiors or their direct reports were evaluating the data for them as a manager or for them as someone organizing and team building. And if the feedback was negative, that could mean their job, quite honestly. So what do we do from a management standpoint? We make people understand that the success of the team is the success of the individual, and they're inextricably intertwined. You can't be successful as a manager if the people below you aren't being successful. And again, it comes back to that leadership quality and that standpoint of accepting the blame and examining one's own behavior. But even greater than that, examining one's own fit into the greater context of the team. What's my role in my team? Well, my role right now is as a salesperson, as a marketing person, and as a cheerleader, and as someone who's creatively, developing programs. And it's evaluating how we onboard people, how we hire people. I'm not so ignorant as to think, or haughty or egotistical to think that I can do this on my own. There's no way, in God's creation, that I could ever operate a company from 2,500 miles away on my own. I have to accept my role as a cog in the wheel. I have to be as good as I possibly can, but I also, and I think this is super important in the management role, understand the things that I'm not being so predisposed to being good at. So there's something, Tom Rath wrote a book called Strength-Based Leadership we use sometimes in our evaluation and our trainings. And strength-based leadership is awesome because A, it doesn't focus on the things you're not good at. I'm nobody's accountant. You don't want me keeping the books. I can
Right.
sell all day long, but I am not the guy to sit behind a spreadsheet or, to input things in QuickBooks. So yeah, hell, salute to that, right? But by the same token, I know what I'm good at. And when you do a strength-based leadership training, Rath really focuses on that A/B sort of Myers-Briggs evaluation of what you're good at. And then it spits back your 4 core, competencies and the things you're good at. And so that from a context, not only in team building company, but hey, this fits into leading a band, right? Having a project for 23 years, understanding how the drummer, how the bass player, how the manager, how the publicist, how the radio promoter fit into the context of this world of Little King. These things cross over. These are crossing disciplines. So from a management standpoint, understanding where everybody's strengths are, playing to those strengths, not asking people to do things that they hate or that they're predisposed to being bad at, and then also evaluating your own strengths and weaknesses and understanding where you fit into that. That's what we emphasize. We do that within the context of all of our team building events as well, for sure.
I love it. I love that you pivoted. I love that you created a way for people to still be engaged with your company, since that is such a the whole point normally would be to be in that room and for everybody to feed off the energy. And so for you all to be able to pivot and create video packages for that, that's big kudos. Who's your musical hero?
He actually just passed away in January of this year. Neil Peart, who was the drummer and lyricist for Rush, is someone who I grew up basically idolizing. And I don't really do hero worship so much. I've been disappointed enough by people throughout my life. When you meet him and you're like, wah, wah, I've been let down. And so I never got to meet Neil. I certainly worked with Rush's producer on an album back in 2003, and that was cool. But Neil, just in terms of first of all, his chops as a drummer, he's sort of generally considered to be, the greatest drummer of all time in rock and roll, at least. But his ability to create lyrics based in literature and based in philosophy and deeper thought, his ability to translate words and concepts into an articulate form, and again, with a creative writing background, a literature background, he's somebody that I always really looked up to and idolized. And he was very humble. He was not an egotist. He was a very private person. He never really wanted to be in the spotlight. He was super uncomfortable with the spotlight, to be honest with you. And of course, people wanted to meet him and find him. And there was massive amounts of adulation when he was alive. And boy, did that increase exponentially when he passed away in January. But just his approach to lyrics, his approach to drum beats, his approach to his craft, how meticulous he was in creating drum parts and in creating lyrics and creating and understanding his role in the 3-piece band of Rush. He's really the guy, the musical hero that I've always looked up to. And certainly there are other guys, I'm a big Tupac fan, and of course Mozart, is a god in his own right, and McCartney and Lennon and Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and some of those guys. But if there's one guy that I wanted to emulate and always kind of worshipped and looked up to, is definitely Neil Peart. He died of glioblastoma, brain cancer, basically in January of this year. And my hero passing away was a big moment. I was in Los Angeles, actually, where he lived when he passed away, and got the news. And I was in the middle of some business meetings that I really sort of had to gather myself, move forward that day. It was a really difficult day. And boy, was that a precursor to the year from hell, my man. I mean, and Kobe Bryant.
I'm telling you.
And obviously, I'm a huge NBA fan and basketball fan. And those two guys in January passing away was a precursor to, I mean, in your lifetime and my life, we've never seen anything like what 2020's looked like. And God willing, we never will again. Yeah, let's hope.
No, I hope not. Yeah. I have to say, before I ask you the end questions, which is always how people can reach you, but I have to say that your picture, I knew you were going to be a wonderful guest, but your picture that I used, the graphic, I'm like, so is this business Ryan? Is this Little King Ryan? And you can't really tell what direction people are going to go, especially if we haven't met in person before. So big kudos to you. Total surprise. When you showed up, I'm like, is that Ryan on the screen? But
studying contradictions. There it is.
I love that, though. I think more people are like that. We should celebrate it. All right. So if somebody wants to learn more about Little King, or they want to engage maybe Team Branding ROI, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, certainly the websites. I know I'm old school and we certainly use social media, but the website's littlekingtunes.com. There are other Little Kings out there. There's some hip hop Little King, and there's another rock band, Little King from Texas. I don't know how that happened, but littlekingtunes.com is the website, the URL, as well as our Facebook handle and our Instagram handle and our Twitter handle. So Little King Tunes is that. And then, of course, Team Building ROI is what it is, and our virtual programs and everything are on there. But We're fairly responsive through the website. We're certainly responsive through social media. I'm excited because we're making some new music now. I've got 7 songs done. We're traveling back to Texas in a month and a half to record. So the updates and some vlogging and some things like that are going to be happening with the Little King site. So hopefully people are interested enough to check out the music, interested enough in what's coming out of my head next. God forbid, they should get a peek in there. But yeah, Little King Tunes for all of that stuff is really the best place to visit.
Fantastic. You're a joy, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Really, really appreciate it. Love the energy. Ryan Rosoff. Right?
Great to talk to you. You got it, Ted. Absolutely.
All right, brother. Thank you so much. Great talking to you. Reach out to him. Check out littlekingtunes.com and TBROI.